business following
This is a
academic
demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Can you please tell the court the kinds of things that you teach the students when you talk about how to put together a human rights mission? What exactly does that mean?
What it means is that some human rights courses deal with just the international law and what the standards are. The course that I teach is to help
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Human rights researchers. So what we do is we do sort of role-playing exercises where they go through and they do actually interviews, and we go through interviewing methodology, things to look out for, security concerns for both the people who you interview as well as yourself in the course of work, because oftentimes you're
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Conflict or are currently in conflict. Once you have the information, what sort of how to evaluate its credibility, how to corroborate information if you receive information from various sources, how to choose your interpreter, and how to make sure that you're interviewing
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Whom you are interviewing, how to ensure that you do not aggravate trauma in the course of doing your interviews. And then once you have collected your information, what you do with it. How do you write it up? How do you categorize, what information is definitive, what information is partial, what information
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Determination as to how you draw conclusions from what you have gathered.
You mentioned corroboration when it comes to witnesses and witness statements. How do you suggest to the students they do that?
Basically, you try as much as possible to go to the primary source. And so, as much as you can, you try and speak to the victims of
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Had the violation against them. That is not always possible, but that's preferable. And so that's your first line of interviews that you always look for. The people who themselves have been attacked or have been hurt or harmed. And so you go to a place and you look for those people. Then you speak to others as well in order to ensure that those testimonies are corroborated by others who have either seen a larger number
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Have another experience of what has happened. So others who have gone to the field, such as journalists, humanitarian workers, hospital workers, government officials, rebel officials. It depends what the situation is, where you're going, but you will then speak to a larger number of people. And then in addition, you will also do some research to ensure
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
At other documents that have been produced about the situation.
Do you have the students sort of do a mock mission? Do you have them plan out a mission?
We have two classes where we basically give them a scenario, which is a very realistic scenario where they have a 2-hour period where they are being sent supposedly to an area by helicopter to a war-torn area.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
They're going to that area and there's 6 or 7 witnesses whom they will interview. Some of these witnesses will give them false information. Some of them will give them partial information. Some of them will give them accurate information. But no one person will give them the entire story. They will interview these mock witnesses, and then they will have 1 hour to put together a report, which will be sent back to their supposed
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
in order to put together a briefing for the UN Security Council. So they do that, and at the end of that session, they get up and they read what they have written, and then we discuss the various aspects of what are some of the dangers and pitfalls. How do you ensure that you do not, you're not a purveyor of false information or misleading information? What are the checks and balances that you will put into place to ensure that you draw as best as you can.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
You know, areas of conflict and drawing information from conflict situations is always difficult. And so you're working under constrained situations always. But how do you best draw out the patterns?
When you talk about the constraints, is it something do you also talk about budget or how much time you'll be able to spend in a particular area?
Absolutely. You know, all of the constraints.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
Are raised in the course of doing the course, and the mock interviews that we do are within a time constraint, and so what they come up with, they have to come up with in the course of the 2-hour class, which in fact is not completely removed from the reality of a situation. Depending on where you're going, sometimes you do end up being in a place where you have 6 hours and 50 witnesses, and you have to make a decision as to how you will.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
When you teach about human rights violations, what do you include in that topic? What kind of violations are you looking at?
What you are looking for, one of the first steps that you take when you start to do a human rights mission is that you look at the international law, because oftentimes just because something feels wrong or because it is wrong.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
It's a violation of human rights, and you look largely at the major covenants, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and Economic and Social Rights, but there are other conventions as well, torture, genocide, etc. And you determine what the international law is out there. Oftentimes you are going knowing that you're looking at a certain area, but sometimes you go to an area and you find things that you didn't know about.
This is a demonstration
So for instance,
of Flip for Mac.
I've done a lot of documentation on the Liberian Civil War, for instance, and you would go into areas and there would be no news about what's happening, and you would get there and you would find, you know, reports of a massacre or reports of, you know, abductions or reports of rape, whatever it is. And then from there, you would start to do your investigation. But it's important to know what the international law is so that you understand what you are investigating will have some bearing on.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
How often do you teach at Harvard? This course you had last year, what was its duration?
It's a one-semester class, which is a three-month course. And last year was the
This
first
is a
year I taught it.
demonstration
In
of Flip for
September,
Mac.
I'll be teaching it again.
And when you say a 3 months course, is that a 3 months course over 3 months or in a period of 3 months covering much fewer days?
It's a once-a-week seminar for 2 hours from about the beginning of September to the first week of December.
So it's
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
14, I think.
all right.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Thank you.
You mentioned massacres as one of the things that you might see when you go into a community on a mission. What other types of human rights violations do you look for?
It depends on the situation that you're going into. In conflict
This is a
situations,
demonstration
we're
of Flip for
usually
Mac.
looking at issues such as killings, abductions, rape, forced labor, forced conscription of child soldiers. In refugee settings, we're looking at protection issues for displaced persons who are fleeing, for people within their country, internally displaced populations that have not crossed a border.
This is a demonstration of Flip for Mac.
As you know, for people who have not been able to cross a border. In non-conflict situations, we look at things like freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, association, torture, police brutality. These are some of the issues that I've looked at in the course of my work over the last 15 years.
You mentioned sexual violence, and
This is a
is this
demonstration
something that you
of flip
discuss
for Mac.
in your class with your students?
Yes, it's in fact, we devote a whole class to that session, looking at some of the issues of methodology around that. In most situations of collecting human rights violations, you will find that people are generally forthcoming to discuss what has happened to them, and they will explain to you.
This
not
is a
just to you, but
demonstration
sometimes even in
of
public
flip for
settings,
Mac.
they feel comfortable discussing what has happened. The methodology, interviewing methodology for rape victims is very different. Worldwide, sexual violence carries a stigma and a taboo attached to it. And because it's also connected to sex, which is an intimate part, people generally feel oftentimes constrained to speak publicly about what has happened. So
This
when
is
you
a
do interviews with
demonstration
rape
of flip for
victims,
Mac.
one of the very important things to ensure is that the conditions of interviewing are conducive, so that you look at ensuring that the safety and privacy of the rape victim is secured before you start an interview. The other thing that I have found and that we teach in the classes is the fact that interviews with rape victims tend to take longer than with other.
This is a
human rights
demonstration of
violations.
flip for Mac.
Oftentimes, rape victims will speak about other violations. They will speak about violations that have happened to their family members, but they will not themselves volunteer that they have been raped or what has happened to them specifically. It's important to give them the space to speak. It's important to let them feel comfortable, and then to begin to ask the questions about rape later on in the interview. So that's another aspect that we go through.
This is a demonstration
The third
of flip
area
for
is
Mac.
the issue of interpreters. Oftentimes you're working through an interpreter, and it's very important. Your choice of interpreter will make a rape victim either feel comfortable or not, depending if it's a male person, if it is a person depending on where you are, which kind of situation you're in, someone of the same ethnic group or someone of the same religious group. Also that your interpreter has to, you have to make sure that your interpreter
This is a
understands
demonstration
that,
of flip for
when
Mac.
you interview rape victims, oftentimes euphemisms are used. So people don't say, I was raped. They don't use those words directly. People don't use terminology of body parts, anatomy directly, vagina, penis. People don't speak like that. And it's important to understand that you will hear euphemisms, but that you also, in the course of interviewing, still have to determine exactly what happened and to ask questions.
This is a demonstration of flip for
You also have
Mac.
to ensure that your interpreter, because every language has these euphemisms, that you go through with your interpreter some of the different words and what those euphemisms are, so that you can ensure that your interpreter also is asking and translating the questions in a sensitive manner. These are the types of issues that we go through. The other thing that, again, I've also found in terms of interviewing rape victims is that
This is
they
a
are more
demonstration
comfortable
of
if
flip
you
for
can
Mac.
find an interlocutor whom they can trust. So identifying who those interlocutors are, who those people are that the rape victims trust, who can lead you to them. You will never be able to just knock on the door and say, I hear you're a rape victim, can I interview you? Unlike some other human rights violations where you can knock on the door and say, I hear you are a political detainee, can I interview you? And so the lead up to creating an environment will determine whether you get
This is a demonstration
and
of flip
even
for
then,
Mac.
I have found in the course of my experience, there will be some cases where women will still not admit that they've been raped and still not want to talk about it.
Do you also discuss in your class the types of sexual violence that may be encountered?
We do in passing, but it's not a direct part of the class. But clearly, I mean,
This is a demonstration
the
of flip for
forms
Mac.
of sexual violence the forms of violence that are directed against women on the basis of their gender are varied, and so that comes up in the course of discussing the methodology. But we don't do a specific class on that. So different things: forced pregnancy, confinement, sexual slavery, gang rape, individual rape. You know, there's a variety of forms of sexual violence.
About how many rape interviews have